start with the most controversial code, that is Industrial Relations Code of 2020. Let me give you a brief background of this. That there were three acts related to industrial relations so far in India. The first is the Industrial Employment Standing Orders Act, then the Industrial Disputes Act 1947, then the Trade Unions Act. Trade Union Act may not be known to many people who have not interacted with trade union, but the Industrial Employment Standing Orders Act, the Industrial Disputes Act must have been much heard by you. So these three acts have come together in the form of Industrial Relations Code of 2020. Now, what is that is there in this code and which was not there earlier, or what was there earlier which has been repealed or has been taken away here? So we'll start with some of the salient features of the changes that have been brought here. The first is the appropriate government. Earlier the appropriate governments were depending upon where your factories, where your companies, and so on and so forth. Now what they have said is that all PSUs, the government will necessarily be the appropriate government, will be the appropriate government. Means suppose if it is a central government undertaking, even if you have only one factory in a particular state, say UP or Maharashtra, it will be the central government. If it is a state government, say a factory owned by government of West Bengal, is in West Bengal, the appropriate government would be the West Bengal government. Earlier, it was not like that. There were businesses identified, the sectors identified, like banking, insurance, airport, mines. Likewise, the central government was identified to be the appropriate government. But here the all central government undertakings and certain erstwhile identified industries would be the appropriate government. But most of the places, the appropriate government would be confined to the public sector, particularly the public sectors and state-owned undertakings would be confined to the respective states. If it is central, if it is state, the state. Another important aspect of this appropriate government is, if you have a subsidiary, for example, you have a public sector undertaking and you have a subsidiary which is a purely private company, like 50-50% private sharing, or private public ownership, which technically is not a public sector, it's a private sector, but still the act specifically includes those subsidiaries as public sector, and the appropriate government would be the appropriate government for that sector. If it is owned by the state government, it will be state government. Earlier it was not like that. Earlier all subsidiaries were subjected to the state government. Mostly they were governed by the state government. Another one is the contractor. If your industry is, say, under appropriate government is central government, and the contractor being obviously a private party, his appropriate government would have been used to be the state government where he is housed. Even if he has different locations in different states, providing same services to the same public sector undertaking, for the contract workers, the appropriate government, for knocking the doors of the court under the Industrial Disputes Act or under the contract labor or any other provisions of wages and salary provisions, he had to knock the individual states' machinery. Now they say that the revised bill says that it should be central government. It says that any employee, whether it is workman or non-workman, who has got less than 18,000, a supervisor but technical person who is getting salary above 18,000 per month. Salary. There is again the distinction between salary and wages, but we'll come to that later. But any supervisor who is getting a salary below 18,000 will still be considered as a workman, and he will have a right to knock the doors of the machinery under the Industrial Disputes Act. When I say under the Industrial Disputes Act, now all these three acts, unlike the earlier acts, see, I am referring to three acts now, right? Earlier, erstwhile three acts like Industrial Disputes Act, Industrial Employment Standing Orders Act, and the Trade Unions Act. There were separate, redressal forums. I currently I have an employee who is running between high courts and the central government labor machinery as to who is his appellate authority. If he sees this code, he will say that, sir, it's central government, I don't have to go to high court. So now, for all these, there is one single authority, that is conciliation officer or assistant labor commissioner, as the case may be. Now, having said this, there is very important provision which is positive as well as negative from the employee's perspective or the trade union's perspective, is the introduction of fixed term employment. Now, if you take out the provisions, yes, the fixed term employment here, they say that if you have engaged a fixed term employee for a work to be done by other employees as well, the work which is done by other employees, and for that purpose you have engaged a fixed term employee, he will be also be considered as a regular employee, no matter his term is defined, right? And therefore, if the work is defined, if the work is already there in the existing company, and another employee is engaged on a fixed term, which is actually, as per earlier act, it used to be an unfair labor practice. So therefore, why I am telling you this is that the same concept, fixed term employee or fixed term employment, for an engagement or a business where you had regular permanent employees and used to engage fixed term employees, it would fall under the category of unfair labor practice. Now the government has regularized it, saying that you can have fixed term employment as well. And therefore, you see, if you remember, those who have studied Industrial Disputes Act, there used to be a section called 200BB, which is nothing but fixed term employment in the modern day, concept.